mountains, crossed rivers, desert places I've known, but I'm nearing the whole shore. The redeemed are rejoicing, heaven's angels are singing. I've come too far to look back. Look around, there's unhappiness. Some see no reason for living. Life will give you a broken dream, full of sorrow and fear. Turn around, don't look back again. Face that new day before you. Place your heartache in Jesus' hands. He will mend your broken dreams. I've come too far to look back. My feet have walked through the valleys. I've climbed mountains, crossed rivers, desert places I've known, but I'm nearing the whole shore. The redeemed are rejoicing, heaven's angels are singing. I've come too far to look back, but I'm nearing the whole shore. The redeemed are rejoicing, heaven's angels are singing. I've come too far to look back, too far to look back.
A terror includes
Just pray and then over to you, Yolande. Let's pray. Thank you, God, for this afternoon that you've given us. We thank you, God, for giving us this opportunity to have this workshop, a very important workshop for the safety of our church members, our children, vulnerable adults, and any person who walks through the doors of our church. We thank you, God, for giving us the knowledge to know some of these things. And we pray that, Lord, on top of what we know, may you bless it abundantly, God, and may you keep us safe always. Be with me and Yolande as we'll be presenting this afternoon. We pray, Lord, that you can give us the knowledge. We pray that you may give us words to say. And as we go through the case studies and exercises and discussions, we just pray, Lord, that you may be part of those discussions. Help us, oh God, in Jesus' name we pray, amen. I'll just share the screen. Sorry, I'm looking for the presentation. Yoland, you're on mute.
Okay. Right. Have I unshared your screen?
No.
So okay. All right. Okay. Oh, okay. Right then. Okay. So you're not going to be able to see me, but you will be able to see Debs. But welcome everybody to today's afternoon program. Debs, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Welcome to today's afternoon program. And our afternoon program today is on keeping the church family safe, KCFS, and it's presented by Deborah and myself. So today's topics that we would like to cover are defining safeguarding, legislation timeline and guidance, child protection, adult protection, abuse, the categories, the signs and the impact of it, church safeguarding process, and protective action. So SDAs affirm so our church has a policy, it's called Keeping the Church Family Safe, and it is a policy which the whole of the United Kingdom have to fall within, and this is the beginning of the policy. It said SDAs affirm the dignity and the worth of each human being and decry all forms of abuse. We recognise the problem of abuse is serious with long-term effects, so Christians must respond to abuse within our church and community. To remain indifferent and unresponsive is to condone and perpetuate abusive behaviour. We cooperate with professional services to speak out in defence of victims, helping all identify and access professional services and providing a ministry of reconciliation where attitudes and behaviour allow. So,
Thank you.
am I carrying on or you?
So I'll go now. I think you.
Okay, fine.
Right. I'm just going to try and in myself because, yeah.
Okay.
Right. So safeguarding children is defined in the Working Together to Safeguard Children as protecting children from maltreatment. So safeguarding, so when we talk about safeguarding, we refer to both children and adults. So you'll find that if you work in the children's services, some of the definitions are different to the adults ones. So safeguarding children, there is a guidance called the Working Together to Safeguard Children. So it defines child safeguarding as protecting children from maltreatment. And safeguarding vulnerable adults is defined in the Care Act 2014 as protecting the rights of adults to live safely, free from abuse and from neglect. And you can find this in the Ofsted safeguarding policy from March 2018. So within our church, there is a BUC, within the British Union Conference, there is a safeguarding structure. So from the BUC, on the BUC level, so you got the safeguarding committee. So there is that committee that deals with safeguarding issues, you know, that encompasses both the North England Conference as well as the South England Conference. So on the conference level, on the mission level, there is the president, who is our current president, Emmanuel Osei. There is the designated safeguarding officer or officers. So these are the people who train us, the Keeping Church Family Safe, you know, designated persons for local churches. They train us, they update the policies, they are kept up to date with the current legislation. They also can come to churches to train if you need them to. They're also there just to make sure that any information that we need, we can access. And there is the communications spokesperson and a disclosure clerk. That the disclosure clerk on the local churches where we have, I'll talk about that more when I'm on the local church bit. So on our local church level, which is Oxford Church, so we have the local minister who is our pastor, Pastor Rudy. And then there's the designated safeguarding officer, who is myself. And there is the disclosure clerk, Yoland. who is presenting with me this afternoon, and there is the responsible person. So the responsible persons is every single person who is a department leader. So anyone who leads a department is a responsible person. So Yolande, maybe you can talk a bit more about your role as the disclosure clerk as well on this one.
Okay. So my role as disclosure clerk is to ensure that everybody who's working with children or young people or vulnerable people has a DBS. So you come to me with your documents. I usually ask you for your passport, your driving license, and maybe a bank statement. And this goes toward an application for a DBS. And then when it's clear, then you're able to then work in those departments. Also, the church also asks for other people in other departments to also have DBSs. So all elders will need them, deaconesses, deacons and deaconesses as well. So there are certain leadership people, because you as a deacon, you could well be asked to teach a Sabbath school class, and you may have some contact with children and vulnerable adults.
Thank you, Yolande. And so for the designated safeguarding officer, my role is to work closely I work closely with the designated officer on the conference level. So any safeguarding concerns that have been reported in the church, or if somebody was to come and disclose to, say somebody goes to a responsible person, one of the department leaders, you may go to the women's ministries leader or someone and report that you have concerns about someone, they'll come to us. When they come to me or pastor, I will just contact pastor, and then I contact Yolande as well. And then sometimes you have to have a meeting about things, or if it's urgent things, you may just have to communicate some way, just to make sure that things are handled safely. So there is a protocol for all this. So if you have a safeguarding concerns, these are the people that you need to speak with. But if you're a responsible person, if somebody comes to you and report a safeguarding concern, I have to know about it, the pastor will have to know about it, and also Yolande will have to know about it. So either way, we will know about it, and then we'll be able to support whoever is involved in the situation and be able to guide them as appropriate. So there is legislation that covers, that guides us and covers the work that we do within the church. So for the children, the main legislation that deals with safeguarding is the Children Act. And this is from 1989. So the Children Act provides a framework for all kinds of safeguarding and child protection systems and laws that have been implemented across England. So the key focuses of the Act are the importance of children's welfare and the requirements and expectation of anyone who has a duty of care to a child. So if you're a department leader, if you're a parent, if you're a guardian, if you're a foster carer, if you're an adoptive mother, you have a duty to, of care to a child that you are responsible to. So the key principles of the legislation are that the idea that children are best looked after by their family, unless obviously intervention is necessary for the child's safety and well-being. So the Children Act, if you read it in depth, it always refers to this term called significant harm. So when a child, the law or the land believes that the children are best looked after by their families, but there are times when a child is at risk of suffering significant harm, or they have suffered significant harm. And significant harm is defined by, an impairment to a child's health or their well-being or their education, or anything that's of concern where a child is deemed to be at risk. So that's when sometimes you see social services getting involved, or you see the police getting involved and the courts getting involved to be able to intervene when necessary. And the second key principle is the concept of parental responsibility and what kind of rights and requirements this entails. So this legislation, it does, put that in detail, who has parental responsibility. So a person who has a parental responsibility is somebody who is the birth mother of a child, the biological father, if your name is on the birth certificate. And also if you are a child who is a looked after child, if you're a looked after child, it means you're in foster care. And so the local authority has parental responsibility for that child. So they share parental responsibility with the biological parents or whoever is named on the birth certificate. So, and also that the fact that a child's welfare is paramount whenever any matter of their safety is being considered in court. So sometimes cases do have to go to court where if there is a safeguarding concern that has been reported and it has been evidence that the child has suffered significant harm, or that if they remain in the care of their carers or parents or guardians, they are likely to suffer significant harm. So the case usually goes to court, and there's the judge who will be there, the child will be appointed a guardian, the parents will be appointed legal representatives as well. And so the case is heard fairly in the courts, and the decision is made about the outcome of that child's well-being. It is very stressful. It's very sad for the people involved, especially the parents. However, if it is deemed that a child has been harmed, sometimes the local authority has to take matters to court for the safety of the child to be decided. So over to you, Yolande.
Okay. So the next act I'm going to talk about is the Children's Act of 2004. The Children's Act of 2004 is a development from the original 1989 version that brought in new guidelines for the protection of children and revised and updated some of the safeguarding legislation. Much of the original act was left the same, but several aspects were amended and clarified to improve the child welfare service in the UK. Who knows this girl? Anybody here? Does anybody here know who this girl is?
Victoria.
Who answered that?
Victoria Campbell.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. So this was a little girl who was looked after. Debs, you might want to chip in as well with this. A little girl who was looked after by her family, who died at the hands of her family, and who was seen by many, many, many people before anything was done. But by that point, really, it was too late. Debs, do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, just to add, this story of Victoria Climbier, it makes me cry. I don't think anyone who works with children here, if you've heard of this story before, it is very sad. It is very heartbreaking. This child, I think all you can see is a smile, but this girl, was in agony. She was in pain. She was born in the Ivory Coast. And she had a very happy childhood. Her parents looked after her really well. And then at the age of 6, she actually started school there and everything. And then her auntie is the one who said, okay, we'll come and take her to France with us because we'll look after her. And this is quite common, even in the African culture or other cultures where a relative may offer to give a child a better life. So this is what happened to Victoria Climbier. They took her with them to France, and they stayed in France for about 5 months. But during the time they were there, the authorities actually started becoming concerned about this girl's well-being because she was starting to miss school, and it was very significant. And so they raised concern, they raised a child protection concern. And so the auntie removed her from the school. And then they said, oh, Victoria is not feeling well. We are going to take her to London with us to seek treatment. So they brought her here to London. They went to like a homeless accommodation. And then they, eventually found somewhere to stay. So this auntie's partner and her, they severely abused this girl. So she was beaten up, she was sexually abused, she was deprived of food, she used to be kept in the bathroom, and she was fed in a plastic plate in the bathroom. So the authorities were involved. So she was seen by social services, she was seen by the hospital, she was seen by the church as well. She was seen by family members, she was seen by friends, she was seen by every single authority, even the police. They saw this girl, but somehow she ended up back in the care of the auntie and the partner, which was very heartbreaking. And so she was hospitalized at some point, and because she was very ill, she had like some scars and bruises and in areas that you couldn't explain. And when she was in hospital, it was actually evident that this girl was frightened of her carers, because the nurses, they observed that when the auntie and the partner were around, she would get really frightened. But again, somehow she ended up back in their care when she was discharged. So she then went back to the houses. She was actually at some point taken to hospital with like burn scars, and they said she had scabies or something like that. And again, they returned her back to the care of her auntie and the partner. So at that time, there was another allegation that came that, you know, the uncle sexually abused her. Again, that wasn't followed up through properly, and nobody saw this girl for a while until the night before she died, when she was admitted into hospital. And upon doing a full postmortem, it was then concluded that she died of malnourishment, and she lived in a damp environment and also restricted movement. I'm not going to go into details about the actual things that they did to this girl. It's quite upsetting. If you want to read more about it, go online and read the Lord Laming inquiry. Lord Laming did an inquiry about how this girl was failed by the authorities. She faced the worst abuse that has ever been seen. That is ever, I can't even describe it. And just to avoid upsetting people, I don't think I'll go into grim details of what happened to her. Unfortunately, she wasn't the last person. There's been other children who faced this. And so this is the nutshell of this girl. And the reason why we have brought her here is that you see in the next slide how she changed legislation, and also she was, you know, significantly failed by the church as well. We have some Victoria Climbias in our church, unfortunately. And I hope that, you know, by doing this workshop, we will be able to help people to be able to identify signs of abuse. So over to you, back to you, Yolande. Oh, there. Yeah.
Right, okay. So why was the Children's Act of 2004 introduced? The creation of the Children Act 2004 was started by the investigation into the murder of Victoria Climby, an 8-year-old girl who was tortured and killed by her guardians in 2000. Victoria Climby, an 8-year-old girl, was tortured. Her death prompted an inquiry into child protection legislation in the UK to decide whether it needed updating to prevent cases like Victoria Climby's death from happening again. This inquiry led to the development of Every Child Matters Green Paper, produced in 2003, which outlined the government's proposal to reform and improve child welfare across the country. This initiative outlined 5 key principles that all children have: the right to be healthy, the right to stay safe, the right to enjoy and achieve, the right to make a positive contribution, the right to achieve economic well-being. The Children Act 2004 made changes and additions to the child protection framework that already existed in England to ensure that all children could achieve the rights outlined in Every Child Matters. The next part of legislation was the Care Act of 2004. And the legislation emphasises the promotion of adults' well-being. The definition of well-being means personal dignity, including treating adult individuals with respect, physical and mental health and emotional well-being, protection from abuse and neglect, control by the individual over day-to-day life, participation in work, education, training or recreation, social and economic well-being, domestic, family and personal relationships, suitability of living accommodation, and the individual's contribution to society. That was found, that's the Department of Health 2014.
Thank you. Right, so children and adults at risk. So what is child protection? Child protection is the protection of children from violence, abuse, and neglect. Later on in the slides, we'll be able to define what is abuse and the signs of abuse and also the categories of abuse. It is the specific actions we take to protect our young people who are at risk of or are being abused. And then adult protection is the specific actions we take to protect our vulnerable adults who are at risk. In our church, I believe that we have seen some of our elderly members of the church. So these are the adults, these are the people that are deemed as vulnerable adults, people who are if you're described as a vulnerable person, it just means that some aspects of your life are managed by other people. So you may need help with maybe some personal care. You may need help with making decisions. You may need help with protecting yourself. You may need help with some advice. So anybody who is deemed vulnerable is protected by law and also by authorities, just to make sure that they're not being abused and that they're living their life to the fullest. So, right, so we're going to do a true or false exercise. So the first, so please unmute yourself and just say the answer if you think that is true or false. So abuse does not happen in the SDA church.
False.
False.
Why do you say that?
Because it does happen.
Because it does happen.
It does happen.
It's linked to number 2.
Yes. So question number 2, when we become Christians, we don't continue to abuse. True or false?
False.
But I guess when you define abuse, it will kind of help us understand more, because some persons might not think what they're doing is abuse. But I would say false.
You said
Although, however, a true Christian, that is true.
But
False. False.
it
that's a
depends on-
tricky one, isn't it?
Yes,
It's quite
that
tricky.
depends on
It's very
the-
tricky.
the definition of abuse in this
False,
country. Because if you're somewhere else, it might not be abuse depending on where you are.
True, that's right.
Right. So that's a very interesting point, Elder Chris. Do you want to explain a bit more on that, to expand a bit more?
Well, because it culturally, like for me, I'm from the Caribbean, and beating a child, well, not say beating, but putting strap to a child, that's the norm. You get some corporal punishment, as they call it over here. What's the term you use? You used a term earlier, Deborah.
Significant harm.
No, not significant harm. You use another term. We call it corporate punishment, but there's a physical chastisement.
Yes, yeah.
So physical chastisement is called there, but if you go to Africa or some other countries, that's the norm. So that's what I'm saying. It's going to be a cultural thing, but you have to come in here. You have to adjust and adapt, because corporal punishment or physical chastisement is a no-no. So someone could be a true Christian, but don't understand that what you do back home and what you do in one country or another varies across geographical location. That's why I say it's dependent, and it is a tricky one.
Yeah, and thank you, Chris. The reason why I was saying it's very interesting is because I've experienced a lot of African parents who come, even Caribbean parents, they struggle to understand what discipline, like what's the expected discipline in this country, because you hear someone saying that I will beat my child if they misbehave, I'll do this and I'll do this, and then you then get somebody knocking on your door saying that your child, while they were in school today, they reported that you've been beating them, and then the next thing you know, you have all these people involved in your life that you didn't want to be involved with. So I think it's very important that we discuss these things, because living in England is very different from where we've come from, and also not just that we've come from different countries, but we're also Adventists. So what do we do? How do we discipline our children in a way that's right before the Lord, and also without clashing with the laws of the land? And that's a very big, I think that's a big topic that needs to be thrashed out. And I think as we go through this presentation, you'll be able to see more of this. And then at the end, we'll have a question and answer where we can discuss further some of these things as well. So number 3, children are always safe in groups. True or false?
False.
False.
False, yes. Children are always safe in groups. Just because there's other people, it doesn't mean that they're safe. If you have a concern about a child or vulnerable adult's welfare, it's best to go home and sleep on it before you have a discussion with someone. True or false?
False.
False.
Yes.
Debs, back to children are always safe in groups.
Oh, yes.
There is, child-on-child abuse as well.
Yes.
So that's why we'd say they're not always safe in groups. It can be children against children.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're very right, Yolande. And that does happen as well, not just for, church groups or school groups, sometimes between siblings as well. There's sibling to sibling abuse as well that happens. So the last one is the definition of abuse depends on your culture. True or false?
True.
True.
But the dictionary definition will always be the same. The way you interpret it.
Right. So the answer is false. Abuse is abuse.
Mhm.
There is no cultural difference to abuse. Abuse is abuse.
Okay.
There is, and I think we'll talk about it more when we actually start looking into the categories of abuse and we start talking about what actually abuse is and the etc. We'll be able to discuss that more as we go. But when you define abuse, it's, again, as I said, let's just go into it and then we can discuss it as we go. But the definition of abuse is abuse. It doesn't matter where you come from or where you are. If you're actually abusing someone or they feel that they're being abused by you, it is abuse. I think this
We're gonna come back to that question, yes?
Yes, we will as we go. Yes. Right. So we're going to go into a discussion. So I think Yolande, we can do this one together because this is my third one now. So I think we can. So what I really wanted us to do is, how many of us here? 18 people. Renee, are you able to create about like 3 breakout rooms for us so we can have like 6 people each? No, minus me and Yolande, so there's 16 people. So we can do 5, 5, 4, 5, 5, 6. I can't do that. If you're able to, I don't know how long it takes to do a breakout room. So we just need 3 rooms so we just randomly put 5, 6 people in there. And then we can just discuss these 2 questions and then we can come back and feedback. So we'll just give you like 3 minutes to do that. So it will allow people to, contribute more as well. Because if it's just here, then some people may not feel like they can talk. So maybe in a group, they will be able to.
Okay, I'll create 3 groups then.
Like, how long does it take time? Because we can go to another one and then come back to this one.
It'll just take a minute.
Oh, okay, that's fine. So just leave me and Yolande out, and then the rest just put them in whichever. So the discussion is, why should the church have a policy for the protection of children and adults? And how does this help the church to be aware and together keep our church family safe? So when you come back, just within the groups, just agree who's going to present the things that you've discussed. And then those 3 people will just come and contribute, and then we can ask questions and stuff as we go, just to try and make it more interactive.
So I'll assign, I'll just call them room 1, 2, and 3.
Yes, that's fine. And we guys have 3 minutes, so 1.5 minutes on each point, because we have more discussions coming later as well. So we want to.
So that's done. You should be able to see, because you are both co-hosts, you should be able to see who's in what room, and you can even go to any room and come back.
Oh, lovely. Yeah, I've seen it.
Are you able to see the list of rooms and the people? in
Yes,
them?
yeah, I can. And I can
Yeah.
see who is in each room, so yeah, good.
Yeah, you should be able to join any of the classes if you want. Any of the
Okay.
rooms if you want.
Lovely. Thank you, Renee.
Well, you can't see me.
I can't
You
see
see
them.
them, Yoland. So if you scroll on the, like, if you go where it says the breakout rooms in progress, and you scroll all the way down, because the ones in the top are those Sabbath school ones. So if you go all the way down, you see room 1, room 2, and 3.
I'm still on the screen.
Maybe. Wait, what about that? Is that breakout? There we go.
Oh, okay.
Room 1, 2, 3. Which
Yeah.
one? I'm joining my room.
Are you joining a group then, Debs?
No.
You
I'm
can go,
not.
you can go in and out, can't you?
Yeah, you can go in and out. So you should, have you seen them now?
Yeah, I can see room
Oh,
1,
yeah.
2, and 3.
So you can join any and just maybe listening
Yeah.
into what they're discussing if you want to. So your 3 ones are next. So that's when the case studies are as well. So I think we just go back into breakout rooms as well, because there's like 4. So the next one that's coming up is the categories of abuse, child and adult, and then the case studies, and then obviously the possible signs of abuse as well.
So I'm doing the next, am I doing the next 3 then?
Yes, the next 3.
So I'm
So when we
doing,
get to the case studies, they will just go back into the breakout rooms and just discuss what they think is going on. And then because it's just 3, I don't know if I can ask Renee to create another one, or it will just be chaos again, because everyone.
we could just do 3, and then the 4th one we could come back and discuss it as a whole if you want.
Yes, I agree. That's what I was going to suggest as well.
Yeah.
So they can do 1 to 3. So
1 to 3.
room 1 will do 1, room 2 will do 2, room 3 will do 3. Then the other one will just do together. So when they come back and feedback, we will do the 4th one together.
Will they be able to still see the screen? So will they be able to still see what they're discussing when they get into their breakout room or not?
So I think so. Or what I can do is I can get whoever is doing is in the room 1, whoever, I just ask them to take screenshots and just make sure
that's a good idea. I was going to say they should
just take a quick picture. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense, actually. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. You are discussing this.
Yeah. Why should the church have a policy for the protection of children and adults? So
okay. You should take a screenshot.
Yeah, I can hear you. Wait, are we supposed to be doing?
Hi, Mutsa.
No, that's Lang.
Oh, Lang.
I don't know if the rooms will automatically close when they're finished or they will. We need to.
No, I can close the rooms if you want, or
Is 3 minutes up already or not?
I think it is.
Yeah, so I think we can. Let me just try and see if I can join and just tell them they got 1 minute left.
I can broadcast a message to all the groups.
Perfect. Yes, please. Just say 1 minute left, and then at 15:46, then we can come back.
It's interesting, Des, what we were saying about the physical. Oh, we all back? Oh, okay.
Oh, are we back? Is everyone back?
Everyone's back.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
am I taking over from now?
So people
Yeah,
are just going to feedback first, and then you go to the next one.
Okay.
So I think we'll wait for other people because I can see some people, like the people in room 1 are still in there. Are still in their group. Room 1. Oh, I think they're back. Yeah, I think everyone is back now. There you go. So we just asked people, so if room 1 can just feedback what you guys discussed, and whoever's presenting. So someone from room 1, whoever you chose to represent you guys. So just feedback.
Sorry, Deborah, I was speaking, but I was on mute. So let me start.
It's all right.
It was a very interesting discussion, quite intriguing as well. And, it was very an eye-opening discussion. It's a pity we don't have enough time to delve further. But nonetheless, so in terms of question number 1, the main reason, well, there are bullet points, but the main reason is to ensure that these groups, by these groups, we are talking about children and vulnerable adults, to ensure that these groups are protected. So the policy would clearly outline our responsibilities as a church, morally, legal, ethical responsibilities for these individuals that are within our group. And also offers guidance and clearly outlined ways to conduct ourselves. So it provides guidance as to what we should do in the event of an allegation has been brought forward or has been presented. It also helps us to understand our duties and responsibilities in terms of the legal aspect, what the laws of the land said, as you already shared those different acts, the Children Act 1989, you both know the acts. So it helps us to make sure we comply and that we are conforming and adhering to the laws of the land, so that if anything is raised, then we can see that we have followed the clearly outlined regulations and stipulations. It also helps us as a church to know what help is available, who we can approach, whether it's bodies that are out there, government bodies, or even the church itself, as to, example, the structure you outlined. So it gives us clear guidance as to the procedure, the route to follow, the protocols to apply, to ensure that as a family, we are working together For case in point that was raised, if I hear of an allegation, it's not my business to go and approach the alleged offender, because the policy clearly outlines that we need to go through the DSO, the pastor, to the conference, whichever route that is necessary to be pursued. And for question 2, although this helps the church to be aware and together, it helps us to sing from the same song sheet, so to speak, as was shared. So because it gives us clear processes and procedures, how we are to conduct ourselves, the route to pursue. So there's an overlapping on both questions, but that's what we discussed in our group, and it was quite an interesting discussion.
Thank you, Elder Chris. Yes, everything that your group discussed, like you said, the time was probably not enough, but yes, everything that you said is very important. It's very, it's correct. So thank you guys for your contribution. So if someone else has a question as well, like as other groups, please feel free to just raise your hand or just ask a question. So room number 2, if you can contribute.
So I'm going to contribute from room number 2. So we discussed, so for the first question, why should there be policies? Why should we have a policy for protection against children and adults? We were saying because, first of all, in church, we discussed about how when a baby is dedicated into a church, we do have a duty of care to protect that child. So we need to have policies in order to actually fulfill those requirements and that promise that we made when the child is dedicated. We also mentioned how being a part of a church is like being a part of a family. So yeah, we should do it to abide by the laws of the land, but we should also want to do it because we care about each other and we care about the well-being of our church family. The other thing we were saying is that in church, I don't know if it's supposed to be like this, but it's almost like there's a hierarchy in church where there's like a power system and people do recognize other members of the church to be sort of higher up. So we were saying there needs to be these policies to protect all ages, all genders, vulnerable people who you wouldn't consider vulnerable as well from the potential abuse of power. So yeah, those were our kind of key points, and we just didn't really get onto that conclusion.
Thank you, Nicole, and your group. It's very important, the point that you raised, that having policies, it does remove that abuse of power, because even in the corporate world or even in the churches, you see that some people, they do abuse their positions to abuse other people in the church. So having a policy, it does protect, and again, no one is above the other person. So we are all equal in front of God, and so we are supposed to treat each other fairly. We're supposed to treat each other right, and so no one is defended, or no one is exempt from this policy. It covers everybody and it protects every single person as well. Thank you. So group 3.
Yep. So in our group, we discussed so why should the church have a policy protection of children and adults? And so we kind of said that having a policy ensures that the church operates within the law, especially when holding meetings and also activities, and that also covers outreach and other things like that as well. We also discussed how it's important that we look out for each other as members to protect people in the church and also the wider community as well. And again, kind of the moral responsibility that we need to ensure that we are doing things to the law and following kind of the law of the land. So that was kind of the reasons we discussed. And then I guess for the second question, it kind of linked into the first one. So by having policies, everyone's aware and there's a clear kind of structure and way that things are dealt with so that everyone is kept safe at the end of the day.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your group. And yes, so the policy that we adopt as the local church, we follow the British Union Conference Keeping Church Families Safe policy. So we do have a safeguarding policy within our church, and so what we've done is we've kind of watered down that policy, and we've just put it in like a one word. It will be we'll try and put it in the church building, near the entrance of the notice board. We'll try and see if that's possible for it to just be there, so people are aware of, that we do have a policy, and that, people should feel safe when they're in the church, and if they don't feel safe, what they need to do and who they need to speak with. So we do have a policy. Thank God for that. So over to you, Yolande. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, I'm now going on to categories of abuse against children and adults. So we have physical, sexual, emotional and psychological neglect, emotional and social psychological neglect, domestic violence, financial and material, modern slavery, discriminatory abuse, organizational abuse, honor-based violence, FGM, online abuse, organized abuse, and child and adult trafficking. Okay, we're now going to go on the case studies. So I'm going to read out the 3 case studies, and then if you're in room 1, if you can take a screenshot and you're going to do case study 1. If you're in room 2, you take a screenshot, you're doing case study 2. And we're going to the room 3, we'll do case study 3, and the case study 4 we will do together. So the case study 1 is Grace is a mother of 2 children. On Sabbath, you noticed that she came with a black eye. The children looked tired and unsettled. Dad sat at the back. You thought he looked angry. Your question is what should you do about this? What conclusions can you come from that scenario? And the next one is case study 2. There is a new visitor at church studying at the local university. He said he was an elder in his country. Children seem to love him. He brings sweets for them every Sabbath. And again, you can discuss that and see what you think about that situation. Are you happy with that situation, or does that raise any concerns? Same for case study 1. And case study 3 is a 10-year-old girl arrives at school and sits next to you very quiet. After a while, you ask if she is okay. She tells you she is scared to go home because her dad hits her and mummy when he is angry. And again, if you can discuss it, think about any concerns you have over that and any possible action. So, Debs, is that okay? Do you want to chip in at all?
No, I think that's okay. It's just some typos on the case study 3 where I put is he's supposed to be she. Sorry about that, guys. Room 3, you wing it.
Yeah. All right. So, Debs, how long are we giving them this time?
I think let's give them a good 5-6 minutes on this one, and then we just do the case study 4 together after they come back and feedback. So,
okay.
What do you think? 10 minutes? 10? Longer? What do you think?
So we answer all 4. We look at all 4.
No, just your one.
Just your one.
I think it's 6 minutes.
Oh, sorry. Right.
So room 1, you're doing case study 1. Room 2, you'll do case study 2. And room 3, you'll do case study 3. So shall we give you 6 minutes then?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, 6 minutes.
I'm going to put them back into their rooms, please, Renee, and give them 6 minutes.
6 minutes is bruised.
Yeah, they can join. They can join now.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I'm going to be nosy and join one of the groups.
When are you going to do? Oh.
I am with you, always, even to the end of the earth. to the end of the earth. I will never leave you nor forsake you. 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 I am with you, always, even to the end of the earth. I am with you, always, even to the end of the earth. I will never leave you nor forsake you. 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 Matthew 28, verse 20, Hebrews 13, verse 5. I will not forsake you. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, or if there be any praise, think on these things, think on these things. If there be any virtue, or if there be any praise, think on these things. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, or if there be any praise, think on these things, think on these things. If there be any virtue, or if there be any praise, think on these things, think on these things. If there be any virtue, or if there be any praise, testimony, seal the law among my disciples. Bind up the testimony, seal the law among my disciples. To the law and to the testimony, if they speak not according to this word, according to this word, if they speak not according to this word, according to this word, if they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them. And when they shall say unto you, seek unto them that have familiar spirits, and unto wizards that peep and that mutter, should not a people seek unto their God, for the living unto the dead? If they speak not according to this word, according to this word, if they speak not according to this word, according to this word, if they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them. Isaiah 8:16, 19 and 20. This word, according to this word, if they speak not according to this word, according to this word, if they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light. It is because there is no light. It is because there is no light in them.
Okay. Is everybody back? Oh yeah, everyone looks like they're back now. Oh,
Excuse me, Yola, could I ask a quick question? Just
of course.
before you go to the next thing. Will we receive any handouts of this presentation at all? Or is it just purely what's on the screen?
Debs, I know it's been recorded.
Okay.
It's being recorded. If anyone wants the slides, we can email it to you as well.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
I might not be able to stay. I don't think I can stay till the end of the meeting. That was all.
Oh,
Okay,
right.
that's fine. We can email the slides.
Right.
And yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know why I'm highlighted up there. All right. Okay.
Your video is off.
Oh, it doesn't say that it is. Okay. Let's just.
Yeah, we can't see you, Yolande. We can only see Deborah.
That's weird. You can. Do you want to speak on my phone?
But you can hear me, though, can't you?
Yes.
I've no idea why my video is off.
It says it's on. But...
I don't know.
Oh, well, as long as we can hear you.
Yeah, you can hear me. Okay, right, then we're going to go into our case study 1, which is Grace is a mother of 2 children. On Sabbath, you notice that it comes with a black eye. The children look tired and unsettled. Dad sat at the back. You thought he looked angry. Room 1, what is your conclusion?
Sister Boy, I take it you did not take up my suggestion. Okay, room 1.
Yes, room 1.
Again, very, very interesting and stimulating discussion. We made a couple of assumptions. Well, not assumptions, but presumptions, in the sense that, okay, Grace could have been eating her eye on the street. She could have had an accident at home, so she came in with a black eye. It might not have been the husband or the dad in this instance who was physically abusing her. So we made we were playing with some assumptions. She could have fallen and hurt herself. But then when you factor in the children looking tired and unsettled, Dad sat at the back, you thought he looked angry. I'm just going to one of my slides, which we refer to, and was the one that came on the children and adults at risk. Child protection. We refer to this one, which says child protection is the protection of children from violence, abuse, and neglect. And then the other protection says the specific actions we to take to protect our vulnerable adults who are at risk of or being abused. So with that said, we came to the conclusion that it is better to be safe than sorry, or better to err on the side of caution than to ignore, as in the case of Victoria Clemby, the case study which was shared earlier. And so we decided that, yes, we need time probably to find out from Grace, but time is not of the essence at the moment. We do not have the luxury of time. So the decision would be to bring this situation to the DSO, expressing our concerns, our observations, and then leave it with the DSO to action accordingly. That's what we decided as a group after a very stimulating and interesting discussion.
Thank you, room 1. Yes, this one I think is particularly interesting because, of course, it says you thought he looked angry. So it to me, you might look at it and you think, oh, this classic abuse, but there may be some assumptions that you're making, but I think it also depends on whether you have a relationship with that person, Grace. Obviously, if she's a regular church attendee, you may obviously, the first thing you probably want to do is probably ask her. If you have a relationship, I think you would ask her what happened to your eye. I think everybody would do that, wouldn't they? And then
yes.
then you could then go on to kind of refer it. But it's interesting, it's sometimes we put 2 and 2, and because at the bottom it said Dad sat at the back, you thought he looked angry. That's your assumption. Mm-hmm. Is he angry, or are you putting the black eye with the dad looking angry and you putting it together? But I think the first thing, definitely would be to ask her how it happened. What do you think, Debs?
If I may, before Debs come in, we did discuss that as well. That point was raised that we should we should speak to her, or maybe find someone who's close to her, who has a relationship with her. Because if I don't have a relationship with you, you're gonna just blank me. But if you can find someone who is close, who can probably speak to the person, that was mentioned as step number one, the first port of call. But the sum of it is we thought, you know what, let us escalate rather than to leave it and with them going back to the home and then it moves to stage 2, stage 3. Who knows?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I agree. Better to be safe than sorry. If you have any concern, you know, just tell someone about it. If you don't have a relationship with that person, or if you don't feel confident. But it's just that in there it says that you noticed that she came with a black eye. So maybe you've never seen her with a black eye before. Maybe she's always come without a black eye, and then on that day you notice it, or maybe she always has it. Some regularly, and she probably wears makeup, and that day she doesn't have makeup, and then it's obvious that okay, there's something. So you know, it's better to be safe than sorry. So definitely speak to someone. Or the danger with trying to get somebody who knows her, sometimes we end up over involving people. So maybe she hasn't even told her friends or anyone that this has happened. So what you can do is like, because if not, maybe she's trying to hide it, but if it's obvious to everyone, then by all means, you can then just say to someone who's close to them, or maybe check with them if she's okay, or you can just go to any responsible person, or myself or Yolanda, or someone, one of the elders or pastor, just say, this is, you know, I'm not sure, I'm very worried about this person, they came with a black eye, and don't leave it until the end of the service. You just straight away go to speak to someone about it.
Right, so we're now going on to case study 2. There's a new visitor at church studying at the local university. He said he was an elder in his country. Children seem to love him. He brings sweets for them every Sabbath. What is your conclusion, room 2?
So we said that, unfortunately, in a situation like this, in today's day and age, you do have to look at it the way it is, and it doesn't look great, if we're being honest. But it doesn't. So you need to look at it, as I mentioned, for what it is. So we said, are there any ulterior motives? We don't know. First of all, we were able to identify a lot of problems with this. The first problem was, you can't just believe some visitor is an elder. Where's his proof that he is an elder? We need to know that as well. But 2, being an elder doesn't make you holier than thou. It doesn't mean that you're in a position where you can be interacting with kids that you don't know. We also discussed that it's inappropriate for any adult to interact with children without first having a relationship with the parents, or checking with the parents that it's okay to interact with the children this way. We said that even though the case study doesn't show anything, it doesn't show anything too inappropriate, as in there's no sexual nature to it, nothing like that. But we did discuss it can be perceived as grooming, because the children are developing a relationship with this man without any guidance from their parents, there's no one looking over the relationship to make sure that it's safe. Kids are naive and they don't know necessarily when things are going too far or not. So we're saying that the building of this relationship with just the children without involving their parents is inappropriate, and so shouldn't happen. We said certain ways we could tackle this were to have discussions with your kids, or with your teacher, with the kids in your class, you know, on Sabbath school and stuff like that, to make them aware that these situations shouldn't happen. And Brother Mugo mentioned that you should be teaching your kids that you don't take things from people they don't know. Even though it's a church setting, children still need to be aware that if your parents don't have a relationship and know that you have a relationship with this person, you shouldn't be interacting with them, even though we are in a church setting. So we said that you need to be having discussion with your kid to make them aware that you don't accept things from people without first consulting your parents. So that would be one way to tackle it. But we did all agree that it was inappropriate.
Thank you, room 2. I think that those were really good conclusions. Yeah, I think that was really good advice. I think it is very tricky when we're in a church situation, because we're always saying, say hello to sister Hugh such and such or brother such and such. So we do encourage our children to do talk to strangers within our church setting, and it is a bit of a tricky situation, but I think you handle it well. Okay, Brother Chris, what is your answer?
Well, firstly, he's bringing sweets. From an health perspective, sweets is just unhealthy. If he was bringing fruits, maybe I would be lenient, but no, I agree with what was presented by
And from an allergy point of view as well.
Yeah. So from a health and safety perspective, it needs to cease and desist. But yes, the point was quite valid.
Mm-hmm. Well done. Debs, did you want to add anything to that, or shall I move on to the next group?
That's fine. You can move on.
Okay, fine. We're going on to case study 3, room 3. A 10-year-old girl arrives at school at church and sits next to you very quiet. After a while, you ask her if she is okay. She tells you she is scared to go home because her dad hits her when he is angry.
Okay, so we discussed this case study, and so we kind of discussed that we need to be quite impartial, and once we're told this information, it shouldn't be something that we just hold on to and don't do anything further with. So I guess the first port of call was to contact the designated officer, and so we were a bit unsure what we could do ourselves. So we said that we should contact the designated officer, and from there we could tell them what they've told us. As I said, from an impartial standpoint, we're not going to make any assumptions, and from there they can either because as I said, it could be an imminent danger. So from there, the designated officer will have to make a decision whether they need to seek assistance from a professional, for example. But yeah, the first port of call was the safety of the child. Even if they weren't telling the truth or anything like that, we couldn't really take the risk that they weren't. So as I said, the first port of call was to go to the designated officer and just present the facts as they were given to us, and from there, hopefully, we're assuming that the designated officer has the right training. So maybe they might need to speak with the mum, for example, or the family to understand the full facts of the situation. But as I said, because what we're told could be used as evidence, that's why we have to be quite careful with what we're told and not make any further assumptions or asking leading questions.
Yeah, well done, room 3. That bit about impartiality is really important, that you don't, when someone does disclose something to you, even if you just write it down exactly as you heard it, you don't ask any leading questions. It could be used as evidence, in the future. So it's really important what you do with the evidence, and ultimately you definitely need to give that to the designated safeguarding officer.
But can I ask a question as well? I wanted to ask the question, let's say you've passed the information to the designated officer and you think you've done your role, but they haven't dealt with it in an appropriate way. Is it appropriate for you to keep going? So to follow it up, basically? Is that something that we should be doing or not? Or is it just you say it and then that's the end of it, mouth shut? That's what I wanted to know.
Okay. I think you
shouldn't the sorry,
Yeah.
could I just put a little input? Shouldn't the designated officer, if you've gone to the officer and you've reported this, shouldn't they just come back to you just to sort of just confirm that, well, I've had to forward it, or actually there isn't an issue, we've misunderstood what the child was saying or something like that? But shouldn't the officer again, I suppose we would need to look at the policy or whether this is in the policy, but shouldn't the officer feed back to you where it has gone, your concern?
Yeah, I think that they could feed back with you and say it's being dealt with. But I think in terms of information of like if it went further to a case, I think it often tends to be a need to know basis.
Yeah.
Like you've dealt with it, they've said, yeah, we've dealt with it. They will probably not give you any more information in terms of how it proceeded. It tends to be, I mean, I'm looking at it as what happens in a school, for example. You pass it on, they deal with it, and then if you need to know any information, or they need to come back with you and say, can you clarify this, what the child said to you, that they may come back to you again. But I think once it's gone forward and you know that it's been actioned, I think you just can leave it as it is, really.
Okay,
that's correct.
But you see, like Nicole asked, what if they just say to you, "Oh, it's been dealt with," and nothing's been done, and the concern is still in the air, as it were. You know, that you still have a concern because you feel the child is still at risk.
What I would advise, I'll just chip in quickly. If somebody comes to us and reports something, like Yolanda correctly said, sometimes when an investigation is held, information from then onwards, it becomes a needs-to-know basis. So if that person actually gives us consent to say that I'm quite happy for you to share information with Vivian because she's the person I initially spoke with when this happened, and if they're happy for us to share that information with, especially if they're an adult, then that's absolutely fine. They can share that with you, or we can send you an email just to update you that, you know what, thank you for reporting this to us. This is what we've done. We spoke to the person and we've referred it, or we've done this, and we
all. Yeah.
But we don't have to go into the nitty-gritties of information because actually it's confidential information, and also we have to work on consent. And if say it has already been referred to the social services as well, we don't actually have to tell you that it's been referred to. We can just say we've referred it as appropriate to the rightful place or anything like that, because actually someone being involved with social services is actually very confidential information. Some people don't want people to know that, so we don't have to break that confidentiality just to tell you because they probably spoke to you initially. But if you're concerned that this thing hasn't been handled at all, because there are situations where people have actually reported to churches that somebody has been abused in some way, and they've reported and nothing has actually been done at all.
Yes, exactly.
In that instance, you can actually raise it you can send them. My advice would be just send an email to the pastor, copy myself in and copy Yolanda in, and say your concern and say, this is what I reported this incident. This is what I thought this was dealt with, but it wasn't. And if you're still not satisfied, you can go to the conference level. So there is a safeguarding person designated within the conference. I'll try and find their email now and just put it in their name as well. You can actually contact them because we are accountable to what happens to the local churches, to the conference. So we have to be updating them regularly as well, some reports of things that have been reported, and also for guidance, so they can support us as well on how to deal with an issue. And if again, it's a conference level, if you're not happy, you can go to PUC if you're not happy. But then most of the instances, if it's serious, if it needs to be the police involved and all, sometimes if you're very worried about something, and maybe, I don't know, you've gone out with people, you've gone out with friends, and someone has told you that, my relative sexually abused me last night and things like that. They're very serious. You may not have time to contact us. Some things may need to be reported. If you see someone being hit, say I am walking and I see someone being hit by someone, or they're being abused in a way that I feel that I need to call 999, by all means, go ahead and do that. You don't have to then ring me or pastor or you'll have to be like, oh, this is what I've witnessed. Sometimes you may just need to do what you have to do before you know what I mean? But then in most situations, you observe something at church, just speak to one of us, either by word of mouth or email or telephone call or text message, whichever you feel comfortable with. And then some people don't want to be known, they want to remain anonymous. You can send anonymously as well to be like, I don't want it to be known. Or you can tell us as you and say, I don't want this person to know I'm the one who's reported it. We can still keep that confidential. We don't have to break confidentiality, unless if safeguarding overrides that. So sometimes if someone comes to me or Yolanda and say, this is what happened to me, but I don't want anyone to know about it. If it's a safeguarding concerns actually they override confidentiality, it has to be reported. You cannot keep quiet about certain things. They just have to be reported, and it has to be referred to the appropriate agencies. It could be the police, it could be social services, it could be just us having a meeting about it and deciding what needs to be done going forward.
But I'm sorry, I don't know. I know we're running out of time, but there was one quick question I just wanted to ask relating to scenario 3, where we were advised not to ask leading questions. Could you just give clarification as to what is a leading question, just for the benefit of all of us, that we all know what is a leading question, please?
I don't know. A leading question might be it might be saying, oh, your dad hit you, did he? Did he? I don't know. Did he hit you? Did he do this to you? What do you think, Des? What would you say?
Yeah, that's exactly that, Ayoland. In the this case that we're talking about, a leading question would be, because you've seen that, you think that looks angry, like in the case study 1. So if you then ask maybe one of the child, or to be like, to go to the woman and be like, oh, your husband hit you, didn't he? I saw he looked really angry. He hit you, didn't he? Or you ask close questions that are like, you don't allow, when you're asking somebody a question, or if you're trying to find out what happened, ask open-ended questions. So open-ended questions is you ask a question that allows the person to express themselves more in detail. So if you say that, oh, was your day good today? And then that person obviously will say yes or no. But if you say, how was your day? And then they'll be able to say, oh, it was this and this and this and happened. Or did you do English today at school? Yes, we did. Or what subjects did you do today at school? How did it go? So allow them to ask you, to answer you in a way that then doesn't seem like you're leading them to say what they'll think that they have to tell you things that you want to hear, and you may actually be putting someone under so much pressure. Maybe they don't even want to say anything at that time. So try and be, tactful in how you ask, and let them be the ones to say. So even when you're recording what they said, or you're writing it down, or you're trying to keep it in your memory so that you can tell somebody, let it be their words and not yours. So don't say that I asked if dad hit her and then she said yes. Especially with children. Sometimes children, not that they're lying, but if under pressure, they won't be able to, answer certain questions properly. They may just say yes, or they may say no because they're panicking. So just ask them, what happened? And then, oh, I saw that you looked very sad today, or I saw that, I don't know, like with the woman with the black eye, like, I noticed the black eye, like, is everything okay? Do you want to share? And then just ask them open-ended questions that you leave them in a position where they are the ones telling what happened, not you trying to feed what you think happened to them.
Thank you.
Okay. The last case study we can do together. An elderly church member arrives early every Sabbath and is often left outside by the carer. You ask them where their coat is as it's cold, and they say, I don't have enough money these days. They also flinch when you try to give a hug. Anybody want to answer what we need to do in that situation? Why do you think they flinch when you try to give them a hug?
It's a potential indicator that they could be experiencing some kind of abuse at the hands of their carer or anybody else in their life. So I think it would be something worth reporting. And for me, if I was in a situation like that, if I wasn't close with the person, I would report it. If I was, I'd probably ask them some open-ended questions about it and see if we could get to the bottom of it.
Yeah. Yeah, good answer. Anyone else want to answer? Or shall we move on to the next slide?
No, I think
to chip in quickly about, why do you think, especially there's something that she said about not having enough money to buy a coat, and it's cold. So it's, winter here, it's cold. She doesn't have her coat on. So she's been left outside, it's freezing. She doesn't have a coat, and she says, I don't have enough money these days. That's what do you think is happening there? well.
Maybe if let's say for example she's a pensioner and the money is not being, she's not receiving any benefit from the money. It could be someone within the, whether it could be the carer or a family member who is misappropriating their funds. So therefore, there's no money available to this elderly person. So that's something that probably needs looking into. Why she doesn't have any money.
Yeah. That's correct.
Yes, that's right. And also, as a church community, I guess as a church family, we could help by maybe helping her with the things that she might actually need, just physical needs as well, while it's being looked into, getting her, getting her a coat or something like that.
I think I would like to ask. It said an elderly church member arrives early every Sabbath and is often left outside by the carer. Why have they been left outside by the carer? Have they not got appropriate care? What is happening there? I would be interested to know why that situation is happening.
Yeah. I would also be concerned about, like what Yolande said, that it's cold. Every Sabbath they're left outside and it's early. So you just, it sounds like I'm assuming there's no one there, so they just left outside. And then somebody maybe has come to open the door, or maybe there are people inside, but she's just been left outside. To me, I'm very worried about that as to why they're being left outside. Why can't they be left inside in the care of somebody? Maybe, if you're a carer and you're caring after an elderly person, whether you're a paid carer or you're a voluntary carer or you're a family member, if you speak to one of the church members and just say, I have a mom, my mom comes, or I'm looking after somebody from our organization, she's called so and so, she says she's an Adventist, so she likes coming to church every Sabbath. We don't have capacity to be staying with her the whole service. So is there somebody within the church that we can speak to, that we can leave this person with, and then maybe come and collect them? But in most cases, if you have a paid carer, they usually stay with you throughout the service. But if you're a volunteer, maybe a neighbor or a family member or a grandchild or something, then you need to speak to somebody, make some arrangement with the responsible people in church, and just agree that, okay, you do leave them with this person, and you agree the time that you come to pick them up. If for some reason the church finishes early that day, you should always have your phone on that they can call you to say, we finished now, can you collect it? Or somebody else can volunteer to drop them off to your house, someone who is known. And people should know, we need to look after our elderly. We need to know if somebody's been left by somebody, that whoever is responsible for them is actually doing what they're supposed to do. If you have to go to the toilet, you have to go somewhere and leave them maybe in the company of other elderlies in the church. Just make sure that, they are well, they are happy, they've had their lunch, they are looked after. If they need to go to the toilet, that they're being helped. And with the finances as well, it could be that maybe she doesn't have access to, she doesn't actually have enough money, but it's for elderly people, they're usually pensioners, or they do get paid by the local authority to pay their care, for their care and things like that. So they should have a coat to wear in winter. So you need to find out why that is happening, what's actually happening with their finances, and find out who is responsible for their finances as well. Because whoever's responsible for their finances, their next of kin, should know why that person doesn't have a court, and they're just left outside every day, every Sabbath. And like in the flinching when trying to give a hug again is one of the biggest indicators of physical abuse as well. People not wanting to be touched. So if you try to pet them or hug them, they flinch. It's just they're not comfortable with being touched. So it's an indicator, a possible indicator of physical abuse as well.
Yes, that some of those things that you've just outlined there, Deborah, are clearly breaches of the Care Act that you were just outlining to us earlier on as well. So we do have a responsibility to take it further.
Yeah, thank you, Sis Vivian. I think Elder Chris has his hand up as well.
Yes, very, very interesting and stimulating discussion. A question just came to my mind, because I know when the lockdown happened last year, March, we know that domestic violence and abuse skyrocketed. The voluntary organization couldn't keep up with the volumes of calls that they have been receiving. And I know we are gradually coming out of lockdown, things have reopened, the restrictions have been lifted. But my question is, given what we have just discussed, and we find that we have less persons who are coming out to church. I know Ella Andrew today was really appealing to the Virgin to come out more every Sabbath, but the number is increasing. Is there any way as a church we can, since the interaction is not that frequent, is there any mechanism we can probably come up with? Let me see if I can articulate it. How can we find out from individuals who are not coming out, especially those we haven't seen, in terms of their well-being, their welfare? Because they come on Zoom, they come on YouTube, but we don't really know what's happening with those members within the confines of those personal home settings. It's just a thought that popped into my head. Should we make more telephone contacts? Should we do more visitations? It's just something that I thought as a church family, we probably could explore. Because given the evidence that's out there, and as we said, Christians are not exempt from being abusers. Just a thought question.
That's a very good question that you've raised. I can chip in, then Yoland can as well. I think what I would, one of the major things about being successful in safeguarding our church is partnership working. So, it could be a multi-agency approach. It could be just us within the church, department leaders and other people in the church. If we work in partnership and just come together, what I would, say that it would probably be helpful for the community service department and maybe the women's ministry and the men's ministry and us, the Keeping Church Family Safe. Maybe we could meet and just kind of go through some of our, without accessing records, but just trying to understand, who are the elderly members in our church and who is looking after them? Do they need support? Because I'm sure that they are being looked after. We know that the members in our church, they are being looked after at the moment. I know a few who go and visit them, help them with some care and things like that, which is already happening. But again, it's all about transparency and just working together to know that has actually someone been to see them, has someone been to see them today, do they need anything? And if the shopping needs to be done, so that people are aware that who is actually gone in and who's done what. At the moment, I'm not really sure who is coordinating that, if it's the pastoral team or if it's the community service team who are doing it, or it's just a voluntary thing where if someone feels like they need to go. But I would strongly encourage a partnership working where we all in partnership just work together and we know we're looking after our elderly members or vulnerable members. It may not just be elderly, but it could be, some of our single parents or people we've been having concerns about before, just to keep checking in on them. Everybody has a duty to keep each other safe. If I'm concerned about Elder Chris for a reason, I should be able to just ring him and be like, Elder Chris, I just thought of you today. How are you feeling? And just check in with them without trying to look for something to report or anything like that, just genuine concern, or if I'm concerned about Yoland, I should be able to just be like, oh, Yoland, I was thinking of you today, or I haven't seen you on Zoom in a few weeks, how are you? And if I don't hear from you, I could go to the pastor and just ask, or the pastoral team, one of the elders, has anyone been in contact with so and so? We haven't been seeing them on Zoom, because I think at the beginning of Zoom, everybody was on Zoom, like we're all coming every Sabbath, but people don't come as much anymore. People are going through things. Some are just tired of being on the screen. Some people are just, stressed about other things as well. So it's just good to just make sure that we adopt that practice of constantly checking in, but also working together so that there's no assumption that, oh, Boo is doing this, or Patience is doing this, or Vivian is doing this. We all need to know who is actually going to these people. Have they actually been seen at all? So it all works if we all work in partnership. And I think that's something that can probably be discussed in one of the business meetings, or say PM councils, I don't know, one of the meetings, or we can just come together as a church and actually discuss how best can we look after our elderly and vulnerable members of the church. And if everybody, they just, chip in, and then at least if people know who is the key person to go to. If I want to, I've maybe cooked a big stew today, I want to give it to, say, So, somebody else I know, an elderly in the church, I'll be like, oh, let me just go, but I actually maybe don't have their address. I don't know who to go to. So who is the key person that we need to go to? And I believe it's the community service leader or Cynthia. So just be, got Cynthia like, oh, I have this due for so and so. I wanted to just bring it to them. Can I take it to you and you take it to them? Or what do I do? Because I believe sometimes people are willing to help, but they don't know how to do it or who to go to.
Thank you, Deborah. I have a follow-up one quickly, based on what you said about maybe going to check on them. For example, last year when the lockdown, Sister Oliver and I developed what we call a telephone relationship, where I would call her and sing with her, pray with her, read the scripture for her. Then she kept pressing me, I need you to come and visit me. And I told her, I cannot come to you to come and visit you alone as a male member of the church. That's against the protocol. So that's something that I had to contact Sister Cynthia, and we went together just to appease her, just to make her feel happy to see me and to see someone else. So that's another thing what we need to be careful of, because I might be going to check on someone, but then again, I could be the person who is also abusing the individual in their homes. So absolutely. The protocols need to be observed. So I told her I need to get someone to come and see you. I cannot come and see you by myself because I'm a male. And that's foolishness, Elder. You need to come, but I was able to convince her anyway.
Thank you for raising that very important one. I had actually missed. Thank you so much for bringing up, because I think it's very important. Sometimes just be like what Elder Chris, not even sometimes, if you're going to visit somebody, I strongly recommend that you go in pairs, even if it's a female to female. If you are friends with them, that's absolutely fine, or they know you already. But sometimes it's just good to go in pairs, because then, maybe you can do more when you're together, but also it gives that accountability where should something happen, or maybe you actually get there and they're serious, and or maybe they need two hands, or, something ends up being reported, at least there is somebody there to give a word of account of actually what happened. But if you're on your own, you may be in a situation that's a bit sticky and you can't come out of it, because it will be your word against the other person. We hope these things don't happen, because it's not nice sometimes being in a situation of being helpful and then something does go wrong, because things go wrong. Sometimes we make mistakes or things may happen. So if you go in pairs, that's my recommend. I would recommend that. I always try to do that when I'm visiting somebody who I don't know that well. I tend to go with somebody else because of things like that. It's just for accountability reasons as well. Yolanda,
Can I also say?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so I was just going to say something to the point that Elder Chris brought up. So at this time, I think, Debs, you made a very good point in terms of working in a coordinated manner. So it's definitely something that I think we will have to improve on, because at this time it's kind of like disjointed so there's a pastoral team, pastoral leadership team effort. There's the community services team as an effort, the women's as an effort. So it's kind of like in semi-autonomous silos, but we need to rope it in together so that we kind of like don't work in a disjointed manner. I also just wanted to say that because there are various levels of trust dependent on an individual, to say a member of the women's ministry, men's ministry, or whichever team, there's something that Debs had mentioned earlier. I may potentially be going through something, and I tell it to, say, Elder Chris in confidence. Elder Chris may go ahead and prod and ask you, like, Brother Andrew, are you okay if I bring this to the attention of, say, a particular department or a particular leader? If you don't want me to go into the details, I'm okay, to do that. So that if as an individual, I know I have something that's worrying me that probably needs to be brought to the attention of maybe the right department, or in this case, yourself, Debs, or Yolande, and I don't know how to do it, or I'm afraid of becoming vulnerable, but I've confided in Elder Chris, right? Because I have that relationship already. Then if Elder Chris prods me and I'm happy for him to, in confidence, share it, it helps us to, again, bring to the attention what has happened, because Elder Chris may reach out to me in the context of a pastoral visit, but if I do not share, and if he doesn't pick it up, he doesn't know what's happening. But if in the midst of our conversations, someone picks something which maybe a member of the pastoral team, someone from community services does not yet know about, then we don't know what's happening amongst our church members. So I think this is more like just adding on to that aspect of working together as a well-oiled machine running the church in terms of the different departments working together.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys. Yeah.
Thank you, Elder Andrew. Yeah, very important points you've raised. I think what I recommend from now, like what you were mentioning about, the disjointed work at the moment, perhaps maybe the pastoral team and the community team, maybe you guys could meet and then discuss and coordinate things. And then if you feel maybe you need to bring other departments in as well, then, do so. But it's just so that there's that, well-oiled machine that you mentioned, that people are working together and the responsible people are aware of what's happening or what needs to be done, etc.
I just think in terms of any concerns that we have maybe around, I don't know, vulnerable elderly or something like that, I think sometimes we may have a concern and we think, oh, it's just too small, it's not anything. And I've always been told that sometimes you have like a little bit of the puzzle and someone else has another bit of the puzzle, and actually those bits come together and it forms the true picture. So I think sometimes we need, if we really do have a concern, even if it's tiny, even if you were to pass it on to someone, even if they throw it out, it may be more significant than you think.
Yes. Okay. So
I'm going to go on to the possible sign. Oh, I'm going to go on to.
Could I?
Sorry, yeah.
So could I just quickly input, Deborah,
Yeah.
based on what you had said about the different departments. Sorry, just a second. Can you hear me?
yes.
Sorry. I think that summarizing what you had said, that is actually maybe a proposal to put to the church when you said like to meet in a business meeting or PM council, or even a proposal to the board to set up something where, yes, not necessarily the board, but like a little register, just an awareness, a list of the elderly members, the vulnerable members who, we do need to keep an eye on as a church, who might be living alone and things like that. I strongly suggest that we shouldn't just discuss this here and just leave it. We really, I would say, need to take this forward and do something practical and beneficial to the older members by having a contact network, maybe. But definitely, I think we should formalize. This should lead to a formalized proposal of what we can do as a church.
Yeah. I absolutely agree with you, Sister Vivian. I think it's something that needs to be done sooner than later. So, like I was saying, I would strongly suggest that perhaps the pastoral team and the community team, and I think there's already other people who are already involved in some care of some of our elderly members already. They can actually be part of that meeting or committee that will plan. Because they already are involved. I think Sister Viv, you also do that already, because you would know more of this because you've already been involved in it, so you can actually have to advise on what needs to be done, what other, like challenges experience, or what suggestions can be put in place, and who will be in charge of that, and etc. So I think, yourself and I think Sister Patience, maybe I don't know who, there's someone else is involved, and then there's the pastoral team, there's a community team, and if you want us to be involved as well, to be able to guide you guys regarding the on the safeguarding side of things, then a meeting should definitely be arranged sooner than later. There's the names that are there, we know who is doing what, and if all people are informed, should any problems arise, people are aware because they're working together. Because I just want, should something happen right now and somebody goes to the pastoral team and they're like, actually, this is what we've been doing. And then they go to the community team and they're like, actually, this is what we've been doing. And then there's no one word from the same church. So we need to be saying the same thing. Should we need to be saying anything or doing anything if in case anything happens? So I absolutely agree with this. I think it's important.
Thank you.
Elder Andrew, the first elder is here. So I think I'll put you on the spot. I think I don't know what's going on with my phone. Am I echoing?
Yes, you're echoing. Yeah.
Am I still echoing?
No.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
I was gonna say that. I'll work something out so that we can have just to tie these down we'll just get like a tangible outcome out of these, a practical outcome rather out of these. I'll put something together with the other team so that we can make sure that this is not just a conversation, but we make it practical.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Elder.
And so I wanted to highlight something as you put on the vulnerable adults, where we had an experience during the pandemic. Let us be aware when we're looking after the vulnerable people as volunteers, because some of them, they have other professionals that look after them. So the communication that we do as volunteers, we need to be, especially if we go in, the other professionals will have their own risk assessment into that particular home, and they have a risk assessment for that particular person. So we also need to be aware in every visit that we know who to contact in any situation that we may face. If there's anything that you suspect is not right, do not touch before or do not say. Make sure you contact the rightful people. Like in this case, it's either to Debs or to Yolanda or the pastoral team, but it's just an awareness that I'm drawing today to the members and also to this group, that let us be aware that some of the elderly people, they have other professionals as well. And could it be important that could be Deborah or Yolanda will be the one then to contact that particular institution, not that everyone who is a volunteer has a right that they can hang in anyone's situation. You're just going in to be a volunteer for a particular thing or for just prayers, but try not to get involved in the things that you may tomorrow regret. So that's one of the observations that we had during the pandemic that we should be aware of.
Thank you, Ma'am, for sharing that. Very important.
Yes, that's very important. Yeah.
Very important. And the thing is, every organization has to have a designated safeguarding person is answerable for things. So in any situation that we are not aware of anything that's happening within the church and we come and we're asked, and if we don't know, we don't know. So we're hoping that this workshop will help people to know how to respond. And I hope these case studies have been very helpful to try and get people to start thinking and try to, visualize certain scenarios of things that can actually happen. And it needs to be reported, it needs to be shared. We need to know about it so that we can be able to support and help the people as appropriate. So, it's very important point that you've raised, Ma'am. Thank you. Sister Yolanda, I think that's your next one, last one.
Okay, I'm going on to the next slide, and it is on possible signs of abuse. Withdrawn or anxious, very young children or vulnerable adults left alone or outdoors. I mean, that just links with what we were talking about there. Children or vulnerable adults looking dirty or not changing their clothes as necessary. Changes in behavior such as aggression, isolation, and unusual fears. If there's no questions on that, I'm just going to go straight on to the next one, Debs. Am I doing that one, Debs? Or
yeah, you're doing the next one as well. Is there any questions at all for anyone? I mean, again, we said these are possible signs. So some people can just be withdrawn or anxious because maybe, they're just maybe stressed at the moment, or maybe they're just, going through something and they just need to be left alone. So this is why we emphasize the word possible signs. So we don't want someone being worried and, you know, say, oh, I saw someone withdrawn today, or I saw somebody, or like a child. I mean, my son, when he eats, his whole body is dirty. So if he has dirty clothes, for example, at the given time, oh my gosh, Noah's clothes were dirty. But if it's a regular thing that, you know, Noah always comes to church, his clothes are always dirty, they're not changed as necessary, even his nappy, it takes the whole day. Or you actually get some people actually reminding a parent that, you know, your son has been having a smelly nappy for a long time, you might want to change them and things like that. So you know, things like that raise eyebrows. These are things that needs to be addressed and reported. So yeah.
And I guess that in terms of the withdrawn or anxious thing would be like, if you know that person really well, and then all of a sudden they are withdrawn and anxious, that is a change in behavior, which you would, you know, it may be of concern.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Maybe of concern. That's why it's good that you say possible signs of abuse, because the one where it says changes in behavior, such as aggression, isolation, unusual fears. Sometimes with elderly people, it could be dementia that's causing phases of that, comes and goes. So, you know, you don't automatically react, necessarily deal with it or think it's an alarm bell, but you have to be able to differentiate. Depends on how well you know the person.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're very right. And you know, dementia is one of those things that are very serious, and aggression is part of it as well. Some people become aggressive, some just want to self-isolate, or some they just start being fearful of people. So if somebody walks into the church and the elderly person sees them and they come to them and try to give them a hug and they start screaming, it could be they don't remember you anymore, or they probably just don't remember you anymore. So if you try to hug them as you've always done every Sabbath, and you may start suspecting, oh my gosh, maybe they're being abused. It may not be, but it could be as well. So it's just good to just, like we said, you know, prevention is better than cure. Maybe speak to somebody, just check, like, oh, I tried to speak to so-and-so today, and like, she just seems unusual, her behavior, she was just not wanting to be hugged, or maybe I tried to speak to them and they're just being aggressive and all, because they're just fearful of what they're experiencing, because they don't know, sometimes they don't understand what they're going through. So it's just one of those things. But with children, sometimes aggression and unusual fears, it could be a major indicator of abuse as well, because children who are, you know, if you're an aggressive parent, you're likely to raise aggressive children. So if they're just being constantly aggressive to other children or aggressive to other people, like unnecessarily, that raises concern. Then maybe you need to speak to someone. But there are some children who maybe they're not vocal yet, so they don't know how to verbalize words. So sometimes they use physical as part of communicating with other children. So they may hit or they may pull, but it's not necessarily to do with any bad parenting. It's just maybe they're trying to vocalize something, but they don't have words yet, and they're just trying to communicate something. So that could happen as well. But like, you know, what we said earlier, sometimes if you're not sure, just say something. See something, say something. Next one, Yolande.
Okay. Yeah. So we talked before about the common sites for accidental injury. So they are your nose, your spine, your forearm, your hip, your shins, your knees, your elbows, your chin, and your forehead. So these are kind of the areas that children often fall over. I know we've got some of us got quite lively children, and they do fall over. And these are the areas that we might expect, maybe, you know, bruising, whatever. As opposed, am I going to the next one, Debs?
Yeah, you might as well, and then I go after. So with
okay.
This one, yeah.
So these are the common sites for non-accidental injury. They are neck, shoulders, the back of their hands, the buttocks, back of their thigh, inner thigh, stomach, front thigh, genitals, inner arm, upper arm, cheeks, ears, eyes, mouth, and chest. So those are I think, yeah. I don't know what else I should say on that, really. That you may see some bruising. What do you think, Debs? Do you say?
Yes. Yeah, I think for somebody, if you can't take anything today, if you want to screenshot this, or again, we'll share these slides. This is very important, especially for department leaders or elders or anybody who's working with children. These are the things you need to know, that there are accidental and non-accidental injuries. So these are common sites for non-accidental injuries. So it's very rare sometimes for someone to just fall over or something and just have a black eye somewhere. Like it's non-accidental. It's that somebody has punched them, or unless they fall at an angle or something, which is, I mean, I've never seen an accidental black eye in my line of work in years, and I've worked in child protection for over 6 years now. It's usually non-accidental. And there's some areas, you know, like the inner arm or the upper arm, even on the cheeks as well, and on the shoulder, on the neck, you know, back of the thighs. Those are the areas where even if you trip and you fall, these are some of the areas that it's quite rare for you to bruise or to have something there. But like the previous slide that Yolanda just talked about now, these are the common sites for, you know, if somebody falls, or maybe you rub yourself against something, or you get hit by a door, or you're trying to close the door and then you get hit, or something like that. These are the areas where you can have common sites. So it kind of helps you to make a judgment. If somebody walks into the church and they have a black eye, or if somebody walks in and, you know, their cheeks are bruised, or, you know, there's something off, and then, or maybe, I don't know, you are in the mother's room or you're somewhere, and then, you know, you just notice that somebody's an injury somewhere where it's not supposed to be. Again, see something, say something, because this is very important for people to know. And if you can easily Google it as well, it's there. So I'll go next. So next slide. So this is, I'm just worried now because the time is gone. So I think we just have to, so it was just going to be a discussion about, you know, do we feel that our children and adults are kept safe at Oxford Church, and how we can do that, and any ways to improve safety. I'm just looking at the time and it's gone over 5 now. So I think as we got into the next slides, I think we talk about it as well. But I think some of the things we've already discussed when we were discussing earlier. And again, we have discussed that Elder Andrew is going to go away and draft something about how they're going to try and coordinate things and be able to make sure that our vulnerable adults especially, and the visitations, things actually going as they should in a partnership approach. So these are the recommendations for keeping Oxford Church. So we'll start with virtual meetings. So as we're on Zoom at the moment, it's very important to name your devices always. So the host should not accept anyone into a meeting unless their identity is verified. Some people use their nicknames, or some people just want to use iPhone or whatever. It's important that we know who you are, because there's children who are also part of the programs. And there's been incidences in other churches where during a church service, there has been somebody playing a pornographic video actually came onto the screen. It was a violent abuse of a child, and that left people really traumatized and children screaming and crying. So we don't want that to happen. So we need to know who is in the meeting. So explicit consent should be sought from parents where children are included, or even better, keep communication with children through their parents. So remember that safe recruitment principle should not be compromised. Only those with DBS checks should be involved in the delivery of any activity, even when online. If you don't have a DBS, you should not be teaching children. You shouldn't be leading any activities at all. If you're a department leader and you have an activity that you want to deliver, and you want someone else to come and do it who is not part of your team, you need to make sure that person is DBS checked. If they are not, then they cannot, because there's no way we can verify that person is safe actually to be around children. So rules relating to having more than one adult present should be maintained. So as in a physical space, children remain the responsibility of the supervising adult. If your child is in Sabbath school, be there in the background or sit with them. If it's a minor, like my little one, we have to sit with him always and make sure that, you know, we are sitting with him, because he can't be left unsupervised there in a meeting. So children should not join the meeting until the leaders are present and active. So if you're a department leader, you're leading a program, if you say it starts at 5, be there at 5, because if it's a children's event, it's likely that parents will come in on time. And if you log in at 10 past or 5 past, children have already been in there. They'll start maybe interacting, and they may be doing things that are not acceptable. So you need to be there, or make sure part of your team are already there waiting before the program starts. Always have your video on for children's lessons activities. Class leaders have the right to remove you from the meeting. if you cannot verify your identity. You have some people who are ghosts, they just come in and they don't say anything or anything to anyone. So if you are leading a program, you can remove that person from the meeting, or you can message them and ask them, could you please identify who you are, or turn your video on so we see who you are. If they refuse and they're just quiet, you can remove them from the meeting. And then recommendations to keeping the church safe for face-to-face meetings. Now that churches are open, hallelujah. Supervise your children always. Never lose sight of where your child is unless someone you have agreed with prior is looking after them. If I know that I'm going to be leading an afternoon program and I ask Bowie to look after Noah, you know, I will have to agree with her prior. I can't just assume that because Bowie is my sister and she knows I'm busy, then she'll look after Noah. I have to speak with her first so that she's aware, because Bowie may decide to go outside for fresh air and Noah may go out in the car park. And the next thing, you know, you don't know what happens. So children should not be going upstairs or to the basement or toilets unsupervised, and never assume someone will keep an eye on your child unless prior discussed. Rules to having more than one adult again during lessons should be maintained. Only those current DBSs should be involved in the delivery of any children's activity. Our church maintains an open door policy. So if you're concerned about something, please speak to someone. I've just put there myself, or your land or pastor, an elder or department leader, speak to someone as soon as possible. Don't leave things to chance, just speak to somebody. Over to you, Yolanda.
Okay. Choosing the right people. Oh, how does the church keep its family safe? So choosing the right people, everyone has a role, training, knowing how to respond to concerns, and DBS checks for all working with children, accountability, and ensure understanding of their role. I think I want to talk to something about choosing the right people. I think best policy is not just to see someone you've been at church for, I don't know, you've seen them for 2 Sabbaths and you say, oh, I think I'd like them to be a Sabbath school teacher. I think that good practice is to be able to see them for a while before you put them into a position until you get a proper feel of them. And DBS obviously is as good as where they have not committed any crime. I think you also get a kind of a feel about people. So don't just put people directly, especially working with children and vulnerable adults. I think so.
Can I
Yes?
quickly speak on the point you raised about choosing the right people?
Yes.
Because within the church manual, there's a 6-month cooling off period where it gives the church the opportunity to do background checks. Because as you said, DBS checks in this country only covers if you have committed a crime. But we don't know, this person could have come from overseas, as in the case of the elder who that case study number 2. We don't know their background. That's why it's important for us. I know Oxford has a practice where with the regular attendees who are Seventh Adventists from other countries, but the best practice is to give them a cooling off period. And the recommendation is 6 months, which allows the local church to do their background checks. And ideally, everyone should transfer their membership before they even take up a post in the church. And that transfer of membership process gives you the opportunity for the local church where they are from to provide you with pertinent information as to whether this person is fit to be working in that role. So I do agree with you along those terms.
Yeah. 100%. Oh, sorry.
Okay, right. Remember, I think this is really key, this one. Remember that our churches are favoured places for abusers to target because we are friendly and welcoming, forgiving and quick to accept helpers and volunteers. So our door is open all the time. Anybody can come into the church. And we like to, have people join in with things that we're doing. We have not in the past completed DBS checks, set out any codes of conduct, or given written clarification of what task you are called to undertake. And I think that the task bit would be linking in the church manual, I think, also has kind of your roles and responsibilities in your position. So I guess whoever is head of a department should be also be able to give someone their roles and responsibilities so they know what they've got to do.
Yeah.
The 4 R's: recognize, respond, report, and record. So reporting. If you have any concerns, I think this is, if you forget everything that we said today, this is probably the most important thing. If you have any concerns, talk to a responsible person or designated safeguarding person. The responsible person is head of department. The designated person and the pastor will evaluate concerns and refer those on where needed. Do not at any point try to investigate on behalf of the church. The safeguarding team will do this.
Okay. So any questions? We've come to the end of our presentation now. So any questions from anyone at this point, please come forward and just ask.
Yes. Could I ask a question?
Oh, yes,
Deborah?
please. Go ahead. Please.
The last thing that, the last slide that you presented to us before Yolande showed the last few, it was, to me, it seemed to be quite particularly pertinent to parents. And I'm just wondering, as a suggestion, whether a sheet should be drafted or drawn up just to hand to all the parents of children at church, so that they're just aware of certain things. Because like one of the things you said about, don't assume that someone is looking after your child unless pre-arranged.
Yeah.
I think that that in particular, and several of the other points, yes, this sheet here, and there might be other things that you could add, but a parent sheet, it maybe already have been done, but sometimes you do see the children running around different places. The parents, it seems to me, don't always know where their child is. I think that they ought to be, or could be, reminded of what they need to be aware of while they're in church.
Yeah, I agree. I think Yolande and I, we've had these conversations a lot at church in the foyer, where we've, kind of had those, just chats about children just running around and being where they shouldn't be, and their parents comfortably sitting in church and they're listening into the afternoon program, and their child is in the car park running around, or they're in the foyer, or they're upstairs, or they're in the basement, trying to open cupboards and running around, jumping on the sofas and things like that. So that's a very, very good thing that you've raised, Sister Viv. I think me and Yolande would create a beautiful poster that we can put in there as well, about keeping our children safe, and to just have these things bullet pointed in there, nice and colorful, and all, just so parents are aware. Because I think, like we said in the other slide, that people are usually trusting of church members. Someone will be like, oh, I trust so and so, they would never hurt my child, or they'll never do this. And people, sometimes they mistake church as free childcare. It's not actually free childcare. You're still very much responsible for your child on at church, unless you speak to somebody and say, listen, I'm going to drop my child today. I'm not feeling well. Can you please look after them for me? So even when you drop them, don't just let them run in the church on their own. Check first if that person actually made it to church that day. Maybe they didn't come in the end. So check with them before you bring the child and say, look, I've brought Noah, please look after him for me, etc. So it's very important that parents know, because I think there's been discussions before where sometimes parents just dropping a child during the lesson, and then they just go without having actually handed over the child to the teacher and just agree that, okay, you're going to stay or you're going to go. So those things are very important, that as long as you're a parent or a guardian or a carer, whoever you've brought to church, whether it's an elderly person or it's a child, there is responsibility, unless you've spoken to somebody about it before and it's been agreed between the two of you. And it's somebody you trust, it's somebody you have a relationship with, it's somebody your child actually knows, and this person will look after your child well. Especially if it's a child who still needs to be taken to the toilet, or they need to like they actually need help, you know, maybe they've used the toilet and they still need help dressing up and all. Because some you can stand in the toilet with them, but they go in the cubicle themselves and they can use the toilet and actually dress up. But if you know your child still needs to be changed nappies, or they still need to be dressed after, they need to be checked if they're clean, then whoever you ask, know that it's the safe person who can look after your child for you, because you cannot then turn around and start blaming the church for, oh, I left my child with so and so and now this has happened. You know, it's your responsibility. You need to be aware of what you're doing. I think Yolande, do you want to add there as well before? So if Yolande wants to chip in, and then Dora can speak, and Auntie Patience as well, because they have their hands up.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Debs. The handing over bit I think is really important, because I think sometimes, and even though if you've got even if you've even got primary age children, don't let the children just run up the stairs. And what if the teacher is not there? You know, what if the teacher is ill that way? You know, I think the handover is very important. I mean, after all, I mean, when your child is at school, you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't just send them and hope for the best that the teacher's there. It isn't. The handover is important, and also I think the picking up is also, you know, when Sabbath school is over, that you go and actually go and get your child, because you know, the lesson may have finished, the children may have gone, you think they're still up in their lesson, the teacher thinks they're with you. Where are they? In the car park or whoever. So I think the handing over is really important.
Yeah. Sister Dora.
Yeah, yes, thank you. Mine is a question, and my question is, when somebody talk to you about being abused, and the person informed her parents about the person abusing her, and the mother did beat her up for even saying things like that, and then she took it to a church elder and explained what has happening and the steps that she has taken. And instead of the church elder doing something about it, he looked at the situation of the person and started abusing her, knowing that she cannot go now. She can't go and tell her parents because of what she told her parents at the beginning, the outcome she received. So in this case, what can you do? I don't know if I'm making sense.
So you are saying that a child.
Let's say, for example, I've been abused.
Yes.
And I've spoken to my mother about, okay, my teacher or my AY leader or whatever is abusing me.
Right.
This way. And then my mom tells me to shut up and not to say it again. And that is not true. And then it's going on. So I said, okay, if my mom didn't help me, I'm going to the church pastor or church elder. And then I reported to the church elder that this person is doing so and so to me. I told my mother doesn't believe me, but the abuse is still going on. What should I do? You know, and then the church elder also now decided to take an advantage of the situation. So in this case, what can you do? Or if somebody comes with you with this, what help can you give to the person?
So it's a very, very sad situation. And, you know, we're hoping, parents, if a child comes to you and reports something, you need to believe what your child is saying. You need to take it further. You need to investigate further, like what your child has actually told you. If your child has said that they've been abused by somebody in the church, don't keep quiet about it. And like we said at the beginning of this presentation, you know, where we put it's right here at the end. These are the people. So there's the safeguarding team. This is the pastor. This is myself, and this is Yolande. Just speak to any three of us about it. Go to the pastor, come to myself, go to Yolande. The three of us, we will sit down and discuss what needs to be done about this situation. It's very heartbreaking to hear That's something, these things do happen in church, unfortunately. And, believe it or not, some parents actually don't believe it when children are telling them that they're being abused within the church, because they don't believe that it can happen, but it can happen. And I think we discussed this, when we're doing that questionnaire, that, just because somebody's a Christian or someone is in the church and things like that, they won't abuse people. Sometimes, not sometimes, people do abuse other people in the church, especially if you're vulnerable. Like in this situation that Sister Doris talking about, this is an elder or a department leader who is seeing that this child is actually vulnerable because their mother doesn't believe them. So they take advantage of that situation and they actually abuse them further. So I would say to you, Sister Dora, should somebody come to you with this situation, these three people on the screen, Pastor, myself, or Yola, speak to any of them. You could send it in an email, you could ring, you could become anonymously or whatever, but either way, it needs to be known that this is what's happening within our church, and then we can refer it as appropriate. If it needs to be referred further, we just need to investigate within the church and, to see what needs to be done, but please report it to these individuals on the screen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
So,
Yeah,
and then Elder Chris.
Yeah, I think it's the same things which are mainly concerned about the vulnerable adults, because we went through a lot. I go back to the pandemic as well, where we saw a lot of things. I found out that as volunteers, we are not aware what safeguarding is all about. Safeguarding, it needs to be known by those anyone should be aware of. I was suggesting, hoping that if we start anew, like the cases of volunteers visiting to elderly homes, we ended up putting a file of knowing who comes in and possibly maybe at which days and what time, possibly, because there was an incident where an elderly was taken out of their home without giving to the rightful professionals that they taken the elderly out. They took the patient, that person, even on unsocial hours, to a point that when the elderly person came back to her home, she then called the professionals to report that she was hungry. So they had to send someone to come in this home to come and feed this elderly person. So what I'm saying here is, it doesn't matter whether you're an elder or a pastor to me when it comes to safeguarding. Because if that case was escalated, the church will be, I'm telling you, will be in trouble by today. But when then I went through to go through the case, going through the professionals, they understood that there were people who were known to come in the home. So I was asking if possibly, if there are elderly people in our church, let them be known in your register. Let there be a file in that particular home that they are volunteers known. Those come to the house. And most of these people that we go, they have they've got fobs, secret codes in their homes. And we need to be aware of that. So could it be known even to the particular, we have the community service involved in this group, that we have the volunteering people, we have students who are also involved. Let all these people be aware that they may be going in that folder, because we need to know them. We need to know which days they go in and they come out. If they decide they want to take any elderly out at their own time, they should inform any person, anytime, who is responsible for that person. And one important thing in that case, even if you know any nitty-gritties about this family, that maybe the woman is vulnerable, her children doesn't come in, it's not your duty to get involved in their family affairs. We still need to respect this family as they are and their decisions that they make. So this is very good that we had this training today, that I will open up things that pained me to a point that I was even afraid to visit the elderly person, because there was so much. Everyone wanted to bring ideas here, and it's very, very dangerous to do that. And as a church, we are volunteering, coming to help, not to get involved in any personal issues, that whatsoever. No one can be a next of kin without any documentation or any legal grounds upon that particular person. Please, I am pleading with the church to make the church aware that you cannot sign any document or be a next of kin unknown. That's all I can say.
That's wow. Thank you for sharing that, ma'am. This is it's very serious. This is why we try to, and we really hope that this has been helpful to some extent to those who have joined. But you know, when it comes to adult safeguarding, when it comes to elderly people who live in their homes and they have carers, if they already have professional carers who are actually being paid by the government to come and look after them, you don't want to interfere with the times that they come in. So some, they have times that a carer comes in the morning or afternoon or evening time, and so you don't want the person to be out, because some of them have to be given medication, and medication has to be given by somebody who's actually trained to give the medication. So while the local authority appreciates, you know, the church support, they absolutely prefer, they love it when church members support their own members, especially elderly members. But it's very important that it's communicated and they actually know who is the key person within the church to actually speak to about this. And this is why I think Elder Andrew is going to be coordinating this. So if there's actually the list of the members who needs the voluntary support, and then the names of the volunteers as well, it's actually then the person, that the people have to be DBS checked for our own accountability as a church, because it is our members, we need to protect them. So them being a vulnerable adult, then, you know, it's very important that, you know, if you're going to go there to visit, you don't need a DBS to visit a church member, but if you're going to provide some form of support, some form of care, something that you need to be accountable for in the future, then you need to have the DBS. So the volunteers as well will actually need, because even elsewhere with voluntary services, they have to be DBS checked for accountability purposes. So it's very important that this be done. So I'm really pleased that Elder Andrew has agreed that he's going to coordinate this for these people to come together. Us as a safeguarding team, we are there to advise, we are there to recommend, and we are there to give guidance where necessary. We can always be part of these meetings, or if you don't need us to be there, that's fine, but we are there to guide wherever necessary. But it's very important that whatever we do, we're accountable for it, so that should something happen, the right people are aware of what's actually happening and they can give an account of what has happened or what hasn't happened. So yeah. Elder Chris.
Mine is just quickly a follow on from what Sister Vivian suggested in relation to providing a leaflet to the parents in regard to their roles and responsibilities, their duties in terms of governing their children at church. I'm just looking at the number of us on the Zoom. I think there might be one person on YouTube or maybe none. There are 16 of us in total. So what I'm suggesting is that from this, we need to communicate clearly to the church in some way or form as to, I believe in educate. We are now opening up church again. Today, I believe there were 70 persons approximately at church. So we just need to give them the information first and sooner rather than later, so that they can be aware of the processes, the procedures, what we have discussed. This has been very, very fruitful, very, very productive. And it would be a shame if it's only 16 of us who benefit and it's not disseminated to the wider church membership.
I agree with you, Elder Chris. I think what we'll try and do is when we get the PM spot, we'll try to do that as well. But one thing I would also recommend to the elders who are present, every Sabbath when announcements are done for housekeeping rules, I think is something that needs to be rehashed every Sabbath. You know, for parents with children, please make sure you know your child is at all times. It's something that just needs to be known. There could be visitors who don't know, and they may think that, oh, this is a church, my child is actually free to just roam around. Just to be like, you know, just know where your child is at all times. And again, we'll put that thing on the board so that, you know, whoever walks in or parents or anything, they can just read. So you can be referred to, you know, if you need more information, it's there on the you know, notice board in the foyer. But it's important that it just be announced as part of the housekeeping rules that, you know where your children are, and, you know, just make sure, you know, you're keeping, you know, everybody safe in the church. So I think it's just something that we need to just adopt on a regular basis. And I agree with you that we need more of these sessions where people are constantly reminded and educated that this is very important within our church. So we'll do hopefully more programs as the year goes. Yolande, do you want to chip in on this?
Yeah, I think, yes, I think it would be, I think this training, although I encourage people in position like deacons and elders and working with children. I think this program really is for the whole church.
Yeah.
Everybody. Safeguarding is about everybody being involved. It's not just the people that work with children and vulnerable. We all need to be part of the safeguarding of the children and vulnerable adults.
Yeah, I agree. Elder Chris, your hand is still up. Do you want to say anything else, or it was
just quickly? Just a quick question.
Okay.
Quick question in relation to this, the DBS.
Yes.
That's what was presented. Are we gonna? Is it gonna be effective immediately that if someone is in DBS and they're working with children, if they haven't gone through the DBS check and they're working with children, that they'll be prevented from doing so until that process has come through?
I think that I've been on top of it. I mean, even though we've had lockdown and stuff, so I've been meeting with people, you know, that were newly in position, say in January, and doing DBSs. So it's something in hand. Unless you want to contact me privately and let if you have any concerns about anyone or anyone that.
It's just me because I work with Ella Jan and I don't know if I'm DBS. I can't remember if if I did anything with you previously.
Okay. I normally remind people when their 3 years is up.
Okay, so I might still be covered.
I have a look and remind.
I might still be covered. I'm speaking from a personal.
All right. Okay. I would have contacted you, but I'll check for you and I'll WhatsApp you.
Yeah. And just on that as well, it's something I actually learned this year. Before you approach somebody to take office in anything, say you approach somebody and you say that we're asking you to lead, say, family life department, and they agree. Before that's actually announced in church, they need to have their DBS up to date. No one should go into office without their DBS updated or without a DBS at all. Because I think there was some point, that was a while ago now, I think, because she's on top of it. You know, you just need to, we need as a church to make sure that before names are actually announced in church, all the DBSs have been done. So the nominating committee, so whoever is the secretary of the nominating committee and the pastor or the pastor, they will need to be in touch with your land from there, like from that point in time. They nominate somebody and say, this person is accepted, we need to DBS them before it's announced in church. Because you don't want a situation where somebody will keep dragging things and they don't have a DBS for 6 months. And then we realize that this person has some allegations in the past that are actually harmful. And then they've already been in office and they've already worked and conducted activities with children. We don't want a situation like that at all. So as you know, as the safeguarding team, what we're recommending the church to do is that we need to start doing our nominations earlier, not to leave them too late. December time, or because people get in office in January. So if we can start around September time and by October, all the nominations actually done, people have accepted. Not only does it give safe handover, smooth handover to the new people who are coming in, but it allows your land to actually do her role without being under pressure of actually checking that everybody has a current DBS and everything is in place. And then they get announced in church, you know, the first time and then second time and then get voted. So please just let's, this is for the pastoral team and the nominating committees to come in the future, that no one should be read, their name shouldn't be read in church if they haven't accepted having a DBS done or their DBS hasn't been done. GM, I don't know who this is. GM.
Hey, Gabo.
Oh, hi, Sis Gabo. Please go ahead.
Yes, it's just a quick one. I just wanted to find out if this is being recorded because I think it's so important. And I realize it's not many people who managed to log in and be on this Zoom.
Yes, it's being recorded on YouTube. And I think we just tried to share it on the communications group on WhatsApp, like for those who were not able to join. And then these slides as well will be shared. So we'll share these slides with whoever wants them. We can email it to you. You can have them for your own reference as well. But it's definitely live on the church website. So it's still being recorded as we speak.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, if there's no more questions, then I think we can just pray. Yolan, do you want to say anything before we close?
Not really. I think I hope it's been useful for people. I think the discussion points are really valuable, but I also think let it not be theory, let it be actual practice now, so that we can actually have some action points from this training, and it can make an impact.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Thank you everybody for coming. We wish you a very happy week. I'm going to ask.
Before we pray,
before we close, sorry.
Yes.
Before we pray, can I just say something?
Yeah, please do.
Yes. Thank you so much, the KCFS team. Thanks for an insightful presentation. We have learned a lot. May God help us to indeed keep our church family safe. Church, I'm sure you'd agree with me on the importance of availing time for all departments to educate and inform us on what we ought to be doing as a body of Christ, but most importantly, on what we ought to be doing as an organization. We cannot win souls. We cannot bring in new members to our church if we cannot assure them of their safety, if we cannot satisfy them that we are aware of what's required of us as an organization, and I highlight that, to ensure that they are safe in our midst. One of the recurring comments that I get during PM Council when I present the church calendar of events is why we have limited slots for Bible studies on Sabbath afternoon. This is one of the reasons why we have those limited slots. It's solely to create a platform to discuss pertinent issues like these ones. Like I'm saying, I'm sure you'd agree with me that this has been time wisely spent. We have all benefited a lot. And these are issues that really need to be discussed. And if we fail to provide the platform for them, then there's absolutely no way we are going to be discussing these kind of issues. It's important for us to avail time for these departments. We invite you to come again next Sabbath afternoon for another informative presentation by the health and safety team. So thank you from the PM department and have a blessed week.
Thank you, Bowie. Thank you, and thank you for allowing us as well to present on today's dates. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask Elder Chris if you could please close for us in prayer, and then we can just end the meeting.
Shall we pray? Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for today. Thank you for the blessings of the Sabbath. Thank you for challenging us during the divine service to recommit our lives to you, to remember our first love, and to rediscover our first love that we had in you. We thank you for this afternoon's presentation, keeping the church family safe. And indeed, we need to be our brother's keeper. And so, Lord, we pray that you may help us not just to discuss, but that we may implement, put things into action, so that we, as a family, as we press towards the heavenly Canaan, that we will keep our children and our vulnerable adults safe in you, that we cater not just for their spiritual health and well-being, but also their physical, emotional, and mental. May you continue to be with the safeguarding team. May you continue to bless them and to give them more insights as to how best to educate the church. We thank you for all the plans that have been laid. May you give us the inspiration, the drive to put these into action, to make them become tangible, so that we may all benefit, because we are holistic beings and you care about every aspect of our lives. We thank you, we praise you for your guidance through the Holy Spirit, for your love for each and every one of us. And I know our hearts are pained when someone is hurt, and I know that your heart is also pained. So may you help us to do what we need to do as a body of believers to safeguard each and every one. Until Jesus comes, may you keep us faithful, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks everyone for